Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, dear students. I hope all of you are well. And I hope you read and watch the video and read the lecture, the previous lecture. And you can, if you have any questions, you can ask in the Viber group. I will ask you in the group if you have any questions regarding the lectures, or if any point you didn't understand a point, or you want to discuss any subject in the group, we can I can answer your questions there. Okay, today we continue the neuroanatomy. We will talk about the last subject in the neuroanatomy, which is the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is distributed throughout the central and peripheral nervous system. It is divided into two parts. So the nervous system divided into two parts. Okay, we have two parts of the nervous system. We have sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So we have sympathetic and parasympathetic. And as it's emphasized earlier, as we said earlier, that it consists of both of afferent and efferent fibers. So as we said, in the somatic nerve fibers, in the peripheral nerve fibers, we have afferent fibers that bring sensation from the skin or from joints to the central nervous system, and efferent nerve fibers, they convey the stimuli from the central nervous system, from the brain to the muscles of the upper limbs and lower limbs and of the whole body. So the autonomic nervous system is the same thing. They have afferent and efferent nerve fibers. Okay. So both the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions produce opposite effects in most of the organs and are thus considered as physiological antagonists. So these are antagonists to each other, so they act opposite to each other. يعني عكسية إيش دكان. So sympathetic شتشي بك, parasympathetic عكسي بدك. For example, if sympathetic causes increased heart rate, the sympathetic system causes increased heart rate, okay? The parasympathetic will cause decrease in the heart rate. So when we are awake, our heart rate is more than when we are sleeping. So when we are awake, the sympathetic is overactive. Sympathetic system is overactive. يعني sympathetic system زيادة لكاتي كبخبرين. While the parasympathetic system is overactive when we are sleeping. And when we are, for example, running, when we are fighting, okay, when we are shouting, we can feel that our heart rate is increasing. So this is due to sympathetic overactivity. So fighting or running is overactivity of the sympathetic system, and we can feel our heart rate is increasing at that time. While at the sleeping, if one checks our pulse rate when we are sleepy, that the heart rate is reduced. So they act against each other. So, but they are acting in conjunction with one another. So there is harmony, or there's a balance between the function of each other, and it is the balance in the activities that maintains the stable internal environment. So now man, the GIT مثلا, the blood vessels, heart, okay, and the urinary system, these systems inside our body, these are not governed. تحكمنا كريبا somatic nerve fibers أو nerve fiberاني كوالبو مصلكان لو skeletal مصلكان بلما تستحكم ذكرين با the autonomic nervous system, the nerve fibers, the efferent fibers which comes to the smooth muscles in the GIT and comes to the heart, okay, muscles of the heart, and for the glands, okay, these are autonomic nervous system supplying these organs inside our body. So there are sympathetic nerve supply to heart and to other organs, and also at the same time parasympathetic nerve supply to our organs inside our body, and they are acting in a balance, okay, in a balance. So if the sympathetic sympathetic overactive, the sympathetic system is overactive, the heart rate, for example, will increase, the peristalsis will increase of the GIT, we can have sweating, okay. So the parasympathetic will act as opposite. So the peristalsis reduced, the heart rate reduced, there will be no sweating, okay, if the parasympathetic is overactive. But in the normal state, when we are normal, the heart rate is okay, and the peristalsis is okay, and the sweating is okay. So they act in balance, okay. They will maintain the balance of the function of our organs, the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. Now we will talk about the sympathetic part of the autonomic system. The sympathetic system is the larger of the two parts. So the sympathetic system is larger than parasympathetic system, and is widely distributed throughout the body. So widely distributed and innervating the heart, the lungs, as we say, the muscles in the wall of many blood vessels, the hair follicles, the sweat glands, okay, and many abdominopelvic viscera. Abdominopelvic viscera, for example, and GIT, stomach, intestine, okay, and pelvic viscera like uterine body in females, like vesical body, in the ureters, the kidneys, okay. So all these viscera are supplied by sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, but the sympathetic one is larger than parasympathetic system. Now the parasympathetic, the function of the sympathetic system is to prepare the body for an emergency. So when we are in an emergency, there will be sympathetic overactivity, okay. So when there is sympathetic overactivity, the heart rate will increase. For example, if we are fighting, or if we have an emergency situation, we are frightened from something, the heart rate will increase due to what? Due to sympathetic overactivity. The arterioles of the skin and intestine are constricted. Arterioles of the skeletal muscle are dilated, and the blood pressure is raised. There is redistribution of blood, thus it leaves the skin and gastrointestinal tract and passes to the brain and heart and skeletal muscles. So, because the heart rate will increase, so we need energy, so the blood passes to there will be constriction of the arterioles in the periphery, in the skin, but dilatation of the arterioles in the skeletal muscle. So we need more blood in the muscle because we may run or may fight, okay, or we may run. So we need skeletal muscle, we need heart rate to be increased in order to make blood circulates faster. So these physiological changes will happen. Why? Due to sympathetic overactivity in an emergency situation. Okay. In addition, the sympathetic nerves dilated the pupils. So the pupils of the eye, pupils يعني glenatau, will be dilated, and the sympathetic system inhibits the smooth muscle of the bronchi. Okay, so there will be constriction of the bronchi, constriction يعني so they inhibit the smooth muscles of the bronchi, and they inhibit the smooth muscles of the intestine and bladder wall, and closes the sphincters. Okay, you should know these things. So the bladder wall muscles will be inhibited. So, and the intestine wall will be, intestinal smooth muscles will be inhibited by sympathetic system, and the bronchi will be constricted. Okay, and the sphincters will be closed. So because in a fight situation or an emergency situation, you will the sympathetic system will inhibit you from being it inhibits the muscles in the bronchi, so that you can respirate or inspire and expirate faster for the oxygenation for the blood, because the circulation is faster. So you need more oxygen, you need more respiration. Okay, and in order to prevent defecation and urination during the emergency, the bladder wall and intestine wall will be inhibited, and the sphincters will be closed. Okay, the hair is made to stand on end and sweating occurs. So اگر الامرجنسي situation بين تمشي مكان ممكن مكان خلصي هرواتو مثلا هندك زال الافلام كارتون دبيني هندك حيوانات وكو بشلشتوا كذا ترسي مكاني همو قرج هلدستي يعني قرج دبي. ف this is due to sympathetic overactivity, contraction of the muscles which supply the ends of the hairs in the skin, and also the sweating will occur due to sympathetic overactivity also. So now, as we said, we have efferent nerve fibers and afferent nerve fibers. So efferent nerve fibers of the sympathetic outflow, it's also called sympathetic outflow. Now, if you remember that we said the lateral gray column, يعني gray column ما نهبو, white column ما نهبو. gray matter and white matter ما نهبو gray matter لنا وندبو white matter لدوري لا spinal cord. So قلت من lateral column مان هي lateral column كهورنك بودر دتسو lateral لو hornates مان هي the spinal cord there will be efferent nerve fibers comes out. These efferent nerve fibers are sympathetic outflow. So these are starts from the first thoracic segment, يعني from T1 up to L2 or sometimes to L3. So from T1 to L2, L3, there will be nerves comes out. These nerve fibers, they are not like other nerve fibers, somatic nerve fibers, which goes to the muscles of the upper and lower limbs and somatic muscles of the trunk. But they go where they are sympathetic nerve fibers, which supply the heart, the lungs, the intestine, okay, bladder, and supplies the hair, the blood vessels all over the body, okay. So these are sympathetic efferent nerve fibers. Okay, so this is the spinal cord. Okay, this is the spinal cord. Now, if you see, these are, okay, this is somatic nerve. This is somatic nerve. This is skin. It has the efferent nerve will come from the skin and goes to the spinal cord. Okay, goes to the spinal cord, and then the motor neuron, which is efferent nerve, the motor nerve fiber comes out to the muscle. This is anterior root, this is posterior root. Okay. Now on the other side, the photo or the picture explains the figure explains the autonomic nerve fibers. These are autonomic. These are present in both sides. Okay, but for explanation, here just the somatic nerve and here just the autonomic nerves. So, but they are both present in both sides. Okay. Now, so we have autonomic nerve fibers in the right and left, and we have somatic nerves in the right and left. Okay. Now, but this is for explanation purposes. So this is the afferent nerves. The afferent nerves here comes, for example, from the stomach, goes to the spinal cord to lateral gray column. In the lateral gray column, there is the neurons or the endings of the axons will synapse with the neuron, with the cell body of the neuron, and the axon, the efferent axon, will comes out. This is sympathetic output, which is from the T1 to L2, and it goes back to the stomach, and this is before the stomach. When it goes, there is a ganglion near the stomach, and near the viscera, each viscera has a ganglion where this nerve ends here, and there will be another cell body, and another nerve comes out and ends in the stomach. Okay, so these are the afferent and efferent nerve fibers of the sympathetic system. So we have another nerves, for example, goes to the lung, goes to the intestine, goes to the bladder. So these are distributed all over the body. Now, afferent nerve fibers of the sympathetic system. So the afferent nerve fibers, they are myelinated nerve fibers and travel from the viscera through the sympathetic ganglia without synapsing. And they pass to the spinal nerve via which rami communicates and reach their cell bodies in the posterior root ganglion of the corresponding spinal nerve. The central axons then enter the spinal cord and may form the afferent component of the local reflex arc or second to higher centers or ascend to higher centers such as the hypothalamus. So these afferent fibers, okay, they don't synapse, they go directly to the spinal cord. Okay, they go directly to the spinal cord. There, either they synapse inside the spinal cord with the efferent nerve, or they go ascends to the hypothalamus in the brain, or they ascend into the hypothalamus, or they directly synapse inside the spinal cord. Okay, now, so what are the sympathetic trunks? Okay, the sympathetic trunks, they are two ganglionated nerve trunks that extend the whole length of the vertebral column. In the neck, each trunk has 3 ganglia, in the thorax 11 to 12, in the lumbar region 4 or 5, and in the pelvis 4 or 5. In the neck, the trunk lie anterior to the transverse process of the cervical vertebrae. In the thorax, they are anterior to the heads of the ribs or lie on the sides of the vertebral bodies. In the abdomen, they are anterolateral to the sides of the bodies of the lumbar vertebrae. And in the pelvis, they are anterior to the sacrum, below the two trunks, and by joining together, they form the ganglion impar. Okay, so, okay. So, these are the sympathetic trunk. Sympathetic trunk is, they are ganglia, they are ganglions, okay? These structures where the synapse between a nerve which comes from the sympathetic nerve comes from the spinal cord and ends here, and another cell body will start here, and another axon goes to the viscera. So this area is called ganglion. In ganglion, there is synapse. The neuron ends and another neuron will start. Okay? Now, we have also, so this is sympathetic trunk. So we have 3 cervical, 1, 2, 3, and as we said, about 11 to 12 thoracic, 11 or 12 thoracic ones, or 4 to 5 lumbar ones, and about in the pelvis 4 or 5 also. Okay, these are this is the sympathetic trunk, which lies beside the vertebral column, and we have also another ganglia Also, these are sympathetic ganglia, cilia ganglia, superior mesenteric, renal, inferior mesenteric. These are ganglia which lie inside the abdomen, near the stomach, near the intestine. Okay, these are also sympathetic ganglia. These are sympathetic trunk, and these are sympathetic ganglia, also lie inside the abdomen. Now, okay, so this was sympathetic part. Okay, now we come to the parasympathetic part. This is a smaller part, and these are, as we said, they are opposite to the function is opposite to the sympathetic, and they are acting toward conserving and restoring energy, not emergency. Restore the energy, not use energy. Okay, restore energy and conserving manner, not running or fighting. This is in a rest manner. So when your body is in rest, sleepy, the parasympathetic is overactive. So the heart rate will be reduced, slowed, the pupils are constricted, peristalsis and glandular activity is increased, sphincters are opened, so you can defecate or urinate if you are in rest or parasympathetic system is overactive, and the bladder wall is contracted. So in emergency situation, it's difficult to urinate, but in resting situation, you can urinate. Okay, due to parasympathetic overactivity in rest situation and sympathetic overactivity in the emergency situation. Okay, so also we have now efferent nerve fibers of the parasympathetic nervous system is also called craniosacral outflow. These cells in the parasympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system and are located in the brainstem and the sacral segments of the spinal cord. So these are present in the brainstem and the sacral segment of the spinal cord. Sacral, the lowest part of the spinal cord, lower part of the spinal cord. The myelinated efferent fibers of these are myelinated efferent fibers of the craniosacral outflow are preganglionic and synapse in peripheral ganglia located close to the viscera. They innervate. Here again, acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter. So the neurotransmitter, which is substance between the nerve ending and the start of the cell body, it is a substance that will communicate between the cell, the axon ending of the axon, and the start of the cell body. And we will talk about this later on in the next lectures. But this in the ganglia, the neurotransmitter, both in sympathetic and parasympathetic ganglia, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. Okay. Now, so if we go back to the this figure, the blue one is the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system are blue. The red one is the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so the red one is sympathetic, the blue one is the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic, we said, also called craniosacral outflow. So it comes from the brainstem through the cranial nerves. We said cranial nerves contains autonomic nerve fibers also. So third, cranial nerve, oculomotor, facial nerve, seventh, glossopharyngeal, ninth, and vagal nerve, 10th. These all are containing autonomic fibers, which goes to the eye, to the lacrimal glands, okay? And we see that all of the ganglia are near the organs, okay? We have no a chain like a sympathetic chain for the parasympathetic nervous system. The ganglia, they are all lying near the organs, okay? So here's the ganglion. There will be this axon of this neuron ends in the ganglion, and the other cell body will start, and other nerve axon will go to the organ. And the neurotransmitter here between these two endings, neurotransmitter is what? It is acetylcholine. This is again sacral outflow from the sacrum, comes out and goes to the lower part of the viscera, okay, lower part of the viscera of the large intestine, and to the bladder and to the uterus, while the vagus nerve, which is a large nerve, supplies the heart, lung, stomach, intestine, kidneys, okay, and upper part of the small intestine and large intestine, while sacral outflow supplies the lower part of the large intestine, bladder, and uterine body. Okay. The afferent myelinated fibers travel from the viscera to their cell bodies, located either in the sensory ganglia of the cranial nerves or in the posterior root ganglia of the sacrospinal nerves. So the afferent fibers go with the other nerves, and they are located in the sensory ganglia of the cranial nerves, and or in the posterior root ganglia of the sacrospinal. So the afferent fibers will travel with the somatic nerves, with the somatic nerve fibers. They travel to the central nervous system. Okay, and the nerve endings in the autonomic afferent component may not be activated by such sensations as heat or touch, but rather by stretching or lack of oxygen. So these nerve endings, they are unlike the nerve endings in the skin. Also, we said in the skin, pain or temperature may cause stimulation of these nerve fibers in the skin, but the nerve endings in the viscera will not be stimulated by pain or by high temperatures, but they are stimulated by stretching. What it means? يعني أما nerve ending man هي sensory nerve ending للسكين بpain يعني بtemperature زور هز بأزار دكين بلام زگمان كيني هز بأزار دكا كغازات ما نبي غازات كتدكا أو intestine جورة دكا stretching دكا استوري دكا رادك شري intestinaka توشي pain دبين أو أزاري دروز دكاتن أو ئازارێک کە دروست دەبی بەهۆی تمپریچەرێکی زۆر نییە ئەگەر ئەمە ئاگرێکی بینی لەسەر ئینتێستینی دانێن لە ژۆرێ هەست بە پێی ناکەین، بەڵام ئەگەر هاتوو ئەو ئینتێستنە غازات زۆر بوو سترێچ بوو کراوە یعنی هەڵکشرا هەنجین هەست بە ئازار دەکەین. Okay, so the nerve endings in the viscera will be stimulated by stretch or lack of oxygen. Okay, I will stop here and thank you very much. Don't forget, if you have any question, we can discuss in the Viber group. And thank you very much and good luck and goodbye.